Hey, my wonderful, beautiful people, a pleasant evening to everybody. Now, I want to talk about something that I don't think a lot of people have really thought through. And I'm hoping that this will be thought provoking, that you will begin to realize and shed, the scales from the skin, or shed or remove the scales from the eyes in order to be an effective and an efficient human being, and to be the best woman that God had designed you to be. There's a scripture that says, speak truth one to another. And yet, we live in a society where females are taught explicitly and implicitly to hide their true feelings, and to, at the expense of who they are, to laud and put on a pedestal other people's feelings. So they are taught to be agreeable. Don't disagree. If you notice, for example, if you're in a group setting and you have a dominant female there, and you have let's not say weak men, let's just say beta men, if they still use that term, and you have, the more softer women there who are not leader-like, you will find that even though they may not agree within, because they do not want to be ostracized, because they don't want to be looked down as different, because they don't want to also looked upon as being aggressive or witch spell with a B, they agree even at their own peril, even to their own conviction. They're not convinced and they're convicted, but they go against the conviction within in order to suit and to please that group. So women, unfortunately, have been taught to be disingenuous and to pretend. Men are like that too, don't get me wrong, especially in the area of being vulnerable. Because of the XX chromosome in the woman, and we use more of the right side of the brain, and the emotions may ring high in all areas, not just anger or sadness, you will find that the vulnerability of the woman will show a little bit more because of the natural feminine nature of the woman. So you'll find that the man will be disingenuous as it relates to how he really feels, especially if he's talking with a woman. He doesn't want his ego to be bruised. He doesn't want to see who is considered the weaker of the two vessels physically. So if the women, they're considered the weaker of the two vessels, and you show that level of weakness emotionally, then you're going to be considered almost like a woman, which most men do not want to be identified with. But even though the storm is raging within, they're able to hold it and to pretend and to give a facade. But the difference is that, when they're dealing with things outside of that, they have no fear in speaking of how they feel about a situation. Men have no fear. They're not caught up. They're not gung-ho on what, maybe people may think per se. Women are. Women are. So they're afraid to be different. They don't want to dare to be different. They cannot afford to go against the status quo because they cannot stand the feeling of rejection. They cannot handle the feeling of ostracism. They cannot handle the feeling of people thinking the worst of them, or thinking that they're not good, or they're not with the ink, or they're deliberately being difficult. It has been a problem, and that has created a lot of mayhem and unnecessary wars and battles in relationships, especially with the opposite sex, because sometimes men think that women go around the world instead of doing a bullseye on the situation, instead of saying, I'm standing up for this, getting into that leader-like role and saying, no, this is wrong. Even though majority may be saying yes, I am saying no. So because of that, women have not been able to be true authentically with their feelings on a lot of issues and on a lot of things. Oftentimes they agree with the victim, but because of fear of being ostracized, they join in with the perpetrators. It is a reality. It is a reality. It is embodied a lot in workplaces, in churches. People are afraid to express, I actually don't agree with what you are positing. This is what I agree with. This is what I feel. They're afraid, that the person may blow up on them or get very irate or angry. So they hold in their thought. No, you have to, think of your neighbor. Value other people, which is important. The Bible, but what does the Bible say? I think we have twisted it. It says esteem others. It didn't say that you have to agree, but esteem others above you. So you esteem somebody above you, somebody esteem you above them. So both of you are on equal ground. It says love your neighbor. Really treat your neighbor the way you want to be treated. So we are on equal ground again. So it was not saying that you trample upon your own self, upon your own convictions, upon your own standards, upon your own principles in order to be with the in crowd. So sometimes what ends up happening is that those women call evil good and good evil, not even realizing it, because they can't be authentic with how they feel about situations. They join in against, they even gang up against. Sometimes you find like 4 of them may gang up against one woman who dares to be different. 4 on 1, they always say, well, 2 on 1 is wicked, what 3 is murder. I don't remember how it go. Something that, can you imagine 4? What you call 4? I know of a woman who experienced 4 women against her without a cause. She did nothing to them. Nothing at all. So women over the years have been taught, and it has been a social conditioning. Sometimes it is probably to protect themselves. I can understand. They master the art. That is why, men will say women are smarter than men. It maybe, maybe there's some truth to it. We don't, women, we don't have the physical strength. So we have to, sort of capitalize or maximize on the emotional strength, the mental strength, the psychological strength. So they will think on how to survive a little bit deeper and longer and harder with tenacity. But what ends up happening is that they pretend a lot. Men do, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong, men do. But generally you find that they really pretend in terms of their emotions. They will not be quick to say, I'm sad, I feel like crying, I feel this way, to women. Even to some men. So don't get me wrong, you do have men who pretend as well. But they don't necessarily have to be agreeable. They are not afraid to say, I don't agree with that. You don't generally find women doing that. You don't generally find women doing that. Unfortunately. And what has happened is that it has created problems between the both sexes, because men feel that, women beat around the bush and they go around the world. They cannot figure women out because they're not sure of what really is going on inside the brain, what is going on inside the mind. So that bond that should be built is very difficult to be built. Many women who have been assaulted sexually, unfortunately, because they tell them that it's a man's world, nothing will come of it. They hold it and they pretend. And then they become poison. They become like kryptonite to Superman to people. They debilitate people. They unleash. They explode. Because they're unable to deal with the skeletons. The skeletons in the closet. They're unable to deal with the trauma. And I want to encourage women today to change the narrative. Be true to who you are. Be true to who you are. You don't have to be disrespectful or rude. But be true and know the audience in which you're going to be very vulnerable with. Guys, you know what to do with TikTok and YouTube. Subscribe. Give me one of those lions.